So I'm Abby Gilliland, and I am a previous student at Northeast State. I graduated in 2019, and then I am transferring out at MTSU to be become like a forensic scientist now. And this is Fehr that I'm interviewing, and she's actually my boss at Bloom Cafe and Listening Room. Just Bloom Cafe, I mean. Sorry. Anything you have to add to that?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. So, so while we want to address owning and operating a small business during a pandemic in just a minute, can you begin by describing what Bloom is and what it tries to do?
Bloom is a small restaurant and we're a coffee shop. We're located in downtown Bristol, Tennessee, and we focus on culinary creativity and real food. So we're a made from scratch kitchen.
Okay, cool. Um, Sorry, my mind just blanked there for a minute. So Bloom is also located in a densely populated part of Tennessee. You're not in Memphis, Nashville, or even Knoxville. And with chain restaurants dominating such a large part of East Tennessee's food market, how does a small local business like Bloom stand out and make a name for itself?
So I think one part of this question is that we're located in downtown, like a historic downtown area. The customers that come downtown and support local business are fiercely loyal. I think they prefer to spend money on local businesses owned by people in their own communities. And I think the second part to that question is that we stand out for our aesthetic. Um, I have thought about everything from the plating of the food to like the plant stands and what those look like. And so everything is thought out from like a design perspective as much as we can. And I think our customers appreciate the like minimal design we bring um, because it's kind of unique to Bristol right now.
That's so true. Like since I worked there, I've kind of like obviously experienced everything. And what is like some um what is like your inspiration for like the food? Because like we've kind of transitioned from doing like a lot of like bar drinks and have become more of a restaurant now. So like what kind of inspired you guys to come up with the certain like plates and stuff that we do?
Um, well, I think it was like kind of because we were able to not really start over, but after we closed, like when we closed from the pandemic, our menu changed a lot, but it's because we were able to add in, like, we didn't have an oven at first. And so we just were cooking with things that we were cooking and making things we, that I really, I looked at the menu and I was like, I want to have a restaurant that if I were to bring somebody over to my own house, like I would be serving stuff that I want to give them. Like I don't want I want to eat at my restaurant just as much as they do. And so I think we started to really think about what Bristol had and what Bristol didn't have and what we were capable of doing. And our menu is kind of it's small-ish, but I think we kind of get the basics right as far as brunch goes. So people just like things that taste really good and are really well done. We make everything from scratch, so we're really focused on ingredients and quality, and I think that really stands out. As far as like the food goes though, I think, it's kind of southern inspired, but also there's things like a chorizo burrito, breakfast burrito, on our menu. So it's not all southern inspired, but I think it hits the mark for a lot of people. And we also are starting to do gluten-free and vegan options, which is important because vegans and gluten-free people, they don't have a lot of options right now.
I can testify to that. Um, have there been any specifically really hard hurdles you had to like kind of like jump over in like bringing on the new like our newer menus and like stuff like that besides like equipment and stuff? Like, was it difficult trying to source things and like, um, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
find things that you
it can
wanted?
be. I think we we we've kind of have a process now, so we know what we want. So say we think, okay, well, in this dish it needs to have like, well, for an example, currently we're working on a vegan burrito because we don't have that right now of like a breakfast burrito. So we have to get samples sent to us of the different types of like vegan sausage or chorizo or, whatever it is that we're going to end up choosing. But we got a bunch of samples and we have to try them all because, again, like, we all need to make sure it's good. I'm not going to send something out that doesn't taste good. So we have to kind of vet it before we do it. So we get a lot of samples, and sometimes that means, I mean, it could mean anything from food vendors. Every food vendor is different. So sometimes they'll send you samples and sometimes you have to buy it. And so it can be a gamble, honestly. But then once you find it, it's worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, so like the future of Bloom, where do you see the food at? Do you think that it's still going to be kind of centered around like the same types of like plates, or are you guys planning on to like experiment with other types of food and things?
Yeah, we're definitely, I think we'll try to experiment as much as we can. We, I think that's part of what makes it fun for the kitchen staff is being able to come up with different ideas on a weekly basis and just sort of experiment and see what happens. Like they have a good idea and they just have to figure out how to make it work. We run different specials all the time, so I can definitely see us just constantly building on it. I don't think anything is set in stone, and I think your menu should kind of change through the seasons too, because if you're going to have, local ingredients, all that stuff is different with, the different seasons.
Okay, cool. So now about the pandemic. In the future, students may want to know what it is like to own and operate a small business and a service industry business at that during a pandemic. Can you speak to that experience?
Yeah, so I was thinking about how to answer this question. I think the best way is to go with a timeline. And so I'm going to talk about the beginning and sort of the middle of it. And then, not that we're at the end, because we're not, but we're at the end of this timeline for this interview. Um, so I'll start with the beginning. And in the beginning, we just didn't know anything. Um, we had no idea what to expect, and everything was unknown. The restrictions for businesses started to happen, and governors were making decisions state by state what was going to happen with lockdowns. So I basically just had to read the news every day and listen to Governor Lee's press conferences. He held them at the same time every day. He did like a standing one for a couple months, actually. So he decided to put restaurants in lockdown. And as far as he, people were starting to go into lockdown, I guess. So I had to lay everybody off, and it was a really hard decision to make. But um, I helped everyone sign up for unemployment benefits. I remember bringing in my laptop to help people go through the process if they didn't do it on their own, if they didn't know or couldn't do it on their own. And I mean, that was a learning experience for me too, because I had never done that before. But once that happened, then um then Tennessee was to go only. So restaurants couldn't do dine in anymore. They had to do to go or curbside. And so it was just myself and my chef at the time. And we went on like that for about a month. I wanted some good data to run, honestly, because I needed to know if the numbers made sense to stay open. But um, once about a month had passed, I just decided, kind of looked at it from day by day and also by the week, and it did not match up with my costs. It costs a lot of money to operate a restaurant um from your inventory to your just daily, turning on the lights and the rent and the the water and all that stuff that you have to pay for no matter what. And it was not going to make it. We just didn't make that much money with to go only, and people weren't really going outside their house, so I closed. And I had no idea if we would be able to open up again, just being honest with you. Um, but once Bloom closed, um, and I was in quarantine, I just had to stay at home and wait. And so I watched the news all the time. I checked for updates with the CDC. And I watched other restaurants and how they were handling things. And that was really important to me, to kind of see what was happening. I read other restaurants. There were tons of articles that were coming out, from the owner's perspective, or the manager's perspective on what they were doing. And so, I was just constantly reading up and trying to make my own decisions. But in that time, I applied for as much assistance as I could, with grants, from grants and loans. And I did get I was able to qualify for a couple different ones, and it was due directly to the pandemic. I would have never had access to that money had it not been for the pandemic. So that allowed me to pay my rent the whole time that we were closed. Because otherwise, you know, businesses that are no longer open can't just pay rent forever, without, any income. So that allowed me to at least keep the building and keep it so that we could open back up. And some of those loans require you to open up within a certain amount of time. Um, and all of my employees, then we had been closed for about 7 months. I was really conservative and just wanted to wait as long as I could. Um, but we were I think it was about 7 months that we were closed. And like I said, all the employees were starting to lose their benefits with the state. There was I forget what Governor Lee called it. It was like, um, it was a mandate to like go back to work. Tennessee's like back to work initiative is what he called it. Um, and so they were losing benefits, so they were about to not get paid. And I knew that if I wanted to keep those people, that I had to open back up because they weren't going to be having any income at all. So we reopened, and we've been open for about 7 months at this point. And Bloom has had a really strict policy on COVID. Um, so at this point, the state of Tennessee has no restrictions for restaurants, but the CDC has conflicting information. So I still follow the CDC guidelines. And what that means is, currently all of the staff wears, a mask the whole day. Um, the kitchen staff wears gloves, and we sanitize everything somebody might touch, like the checkbooks and the door handles and surfaces. And we wash our hands all the time. You do anyway in a restaurant, but we use a lot of hand sanitizer. And the customers have to wear a face covering to enter the building. And then when they're seated at the table, they can take them off. To be honest with you, I know other states can enforce their mask policy a little bit tighter than we can, but I just don't feel like I can. Our mask policy is really strict, for our area. Um, a lot of people are not, they don't have, I mean, I constantly see people in restaurants they don't have any policy on it. And we sometimes have confrontations about our policies, but I think some of that is because a lot of the other establishments in the area aren't following any guidelines. Um, but a lot of customers appreciate our policy and my stance on everything. That's been really interesting because I've been able to see like the reactions from customers who come in and say, thank you for doing this. Like, we really feel safe. This is our first time in a restaurant. And that's a big deal. It's weird to think, um that this is kind of like tied everyone together, but a lot of my customers appreciate, our policy. And so recently, I guess to bring it to the current timeline, we recently had to close because one of the employees tested positive for COVID. So as soon as we found out, um, I shut down that day. The employee didn't work the day that she found out she was off. And I I waited a few days and we had everyone tested. We tried to, you were really helpful in that process because we asked you for help because we wanted to make sure that um, everyone had access to free testing and didn't have to pay for it. Um, and everyone tested negative that worked there. And I would say, that is a testament to our mask policy. I mean, we're in close quarters with each other and nobody else had COVID. So the policy definitely works. I completely believe it. I'm not going to regret it. Um, we deep cleaned as soon as we found out. I was like, okay, well, I feel like we can open now. And we deep cleaned everything um, and got ready to open back up. And um, so I think, I mean, and I was transparent the whole time on social media. I said why we were closing, and I said, I updated everyone on when we were going to reopen and why. And, um, it's a risk to do that. Honestly, like it was a risk, but I felt like that was the right thing to do. I had seen other restaurants do that, and I really respected them for making that decision, because it isn't about, I mean, yes, money is important in owning a business, definitely, but I mean, I really do care about my employees, and I know a lot of other restaurant owners that we really care. So, it's important to, if I would have just carried on and I mean, I didn't know if everyone had COVID or not. I had to assume that there was a strong possibility that some other person might have it, but luckily, you know, no one did. And we were able to get back in. And I think our regular customers were grateful for the policy and the transparency on that. Um, so yeah, that's my long answer.
Okay. So do you think that Bloom would be where it's at right now if we hadn't been closed for like 7, 8 months? Because I feel like we came back with like a huge just like boom, and it has been incredibly busy. We've been on wait times for up to 2 hours on the weekends sometimes, and like we are constantly selling out of things. And do you think that it would have been different if we would have came back sooner, or do you think it was leading up to us being that popular, or do you think like it had to do with like our policies and stuff like that?
I think it does have something to do with our policies, but I guess if are you asking if not for COVID, would we be where we are?
Right.
I don't know. I would like to think that we would be, but honestly, like I said before, small business owners don't in the past have not had access to money for cash flow. And so that's really important because in your slow season, sometimes it might be a little bit harder because your bills stay the same, but your cash flow is much lower in the winter months. And so um and then it becomes like a boom in the spring and the summer for restaurants, or at least for Bloom. And so, my goal was always to renovate and to get to this point. And so we just kind of got here a little bit sooner than I expected, which I'm really grateful for because we had the time to close, and I got to take my time and do the renovations. And I did them myself with my partner and with two other with my brother and his partner as well. So we just kind of the two of them, or well, my brother didn't have unemployment, so that's another thing that Bloom did was I was able to use the money to help pay him during that time because he didn't have a job, and he was about to come back on as a chef, and I needed to kind of guarantee his position there too. Not that I don't know that that has anything to do really with what you asked me, but it's just something I remembered. But I guess like I would like to think that that we would become this popular if not for the pandemic, but it certainly in this case, honestly, like it helped, I'm not saying the pandemic was a good thing. I would never say that. I'm saying, I guess, that um you know, we were able to turn a really negative thing that happened into a positive thing. And we're the better for it now. And I do think it made us all um a little stronger and maybe appreciate things a little more. We all had a little bit of downtime to kind of reflect on what we had before everything shut down. And it's interesting to think back and think of where we were before, and where we are now. And I think every one of us is a little bit different.
Hmm. Um, I know I'm pretty sure you already like answered this question, but would you have like going back, during the 8 months or even more recently, like is there anything that you would have done differently about your policies, like make them more stricter or more like anything different?
Um, for the most part, I have stuck. I think that I said, this is what my policy is going to be. And I have just tried to really stick by it no matter what. And so, even though people are getting vaccinated and stuff, we're getting a little bit of pushback with people not wanting to wear masks right now. But I have yet to hear anything from the CDC that says, yeah, go into a restaurant without your mask and with 100 other people, and that's safe. So, I until that happens, like I'm just gonna wait it out. And so I don't think I'm gonna regret the way I handled it. I wanted to be strict about it, and I am.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really do appreciate that just because of like other businesses downtown, like their reputations from the pandemic. I know a lot of places haven't had like the best policies. So I think that has really helped us with our customer service.
Yeah.
Um, so something else that people may or may not know about Bloom is that it is an advocate and ally for the LGBTQ, queer, and trans people. Why is that important?
Well, I think it's important to be socially conscious, and that means being accepting of everyone and trying to do the right things for your employees and your community. The world in general hasn't always been accepting of LGBTQ plus, and personally, I identify as queer, and so it's important to me, personally and professionally. And I think when you're socially conscious, not only are your employees affected, but your consumers, they can also see like where they're spending their money. And it's always good, in my opinion, to promote acceptance.
Okay, so when thinking about being an advocate and ally for the LGBTQ, queer, and trans people, what does that look like for your business?
Um, so, um, we have a sign on our door that says, it's when you first walk in, it says all genders welcome. We've had it since we opened. We do get some comments about it every now and then, but for the most part, the comments are grateful. Um, because of our advocacy, like probably half of our staff are part of the LGBTQ plus community. People know that they can apply at Bloom and they won't be discriminated against. Um, so I think that's definitely a positive. But, when building out Bloom, I was really adamant to make our restrooms gender neutral. And that's not always so popular with like older generations and dealing with people in construction and people doing the build out. Um, and it's important to me because if you're in the trans or gender non-conforming community, that's important to feel safe in a space and not have to deal with that confrontation at all. um and actually we're thinking of expanding right now, and I've had to have this conversation again, to get the blueprints changed,
Oh,
to make
hang on.
sure that the bathrooms wouldn't be separated by gender, because they work. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it kind of froze for a minute, but I think
Okay.
you're.
I don't know if I should go back, but all I was saying was that, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, we're thinking of expanding, and I had to have the conversation again with the developers and with the construction people, and the because we had blueprints and they had already been planned to make, two separate bathrooms, and I just had to tell the designer and the CEO of the company that I'm working with that it was really important to me personally to keep them with the single stall and gender neutral. But honestly, they had a really good reaction, so I didn't get a lot of pushback from that. So, um, you know, these things are important to me, and I just I have to keep continuing them if we do expand. So, um,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so that would kind of go along with like the challenges you've experienced with like trying to advocate and like be inclusive with your business then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I luckily haven't really seen any negative feedback from that a whole lot. Like, you know, it's been for the most part positive because I get really good people to apply, and like I said, they know that they're not being discriminated against, and every now and then somebody will come in and say something about the sign, or people will get confused about the bathrooms a little, but um for the most part I haven't really experienced anything that's like super negative, to be honest with you. Not so far. I mean, every now and then, but for the most part, I would say that the reaction has been really positive.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay. So in the past, it seemed businesses in the United States, both big and small, were reluctant to openly engage with politics for fear of alienating customers and consumers. However, in 2020, many major corporates vocally supported the Black Lives Matter protests. Mask mandates in stores and restaurants were seen as a political issue more than a public health issue. Even at Bloom in 2019, you hosted Andrea Gibson, a poet and LGBTQ activist. What do you make of this move from businesses to engage in politics in ways they haven't in the past?
Um, so I think, in America, the past year has been really hard. 2020, we saw a lot of just terrible things happen because we're shown time and time again that voices are not being heard, and they're oftentimes crushed by the people in power. So, you know, it may seem ridiculous for a restaurant to have an opinion, but honestly, a restaurant should take a political stance, in my opinion, because if more and more people started doing it, then more voices can be heard and accepted. And basic human rights should not be seen as political. Um, Yet it is. But that's the I think when you're dealing with human rights and with the Black Lives Matter protests um, and any type of like activism with LGBTQ, you know, it comes down to human rights. And I think if I don't know, that's not a political thing to me, but it is. Um,
Yeah,
and I think more businesses are starting to engage for sure. And I am not quiet about, Bloom's opinions on things normally. Um, so I think more and more are starting to do it, definitely, especially just after this year. I think just because, you know, our timeline has changed, it wasn't always that people were speaking out, but now we have access to um, so many different media outlets, whether it's news or social media, and you're just seeing all these horrible things that are happening in the world. And if people just refuse to talk about it, like nothing ever will be changed.
right. Um, I feel like I've seen like a huge influx of like businesses starting to post more about it just from like last year alone with like George Floyd. And like, I mean, I know that a bunch of us from Bloom, even during the pandemic, had gone to like socially distanced like protests and things like that. And I think that Bloom has done a really great job at advocating for like the Black Lives Matter movement and also for the LGBTQ. Do you see like Bristol in general going more towards that route? Like, do you think that other small businesses in the area will kind of follow lead after seeing us and Bloom taking those steps to advocate for those minorities?
I hope so. I know that there is a on so I know recently there's going to be like a Juneteenth rally, and I just got a message about that from like the um one of the leaders, and she messaged me just asking if Bloom would consider like donating to, to help with getting money for that event. And so she has a lot of information about it, and I'm excited to read about it. But anytime stuff like that happens, I'm just like, yes, like I'll do it, of course. So sending like a gift card or being a vendor, it's hard for us to be a vendor, just because of the stuff that we have. Food is hard. It's a whole process. But if I can help by contributing to a raffle that donates directly to the cause, like, I'm always going to do that.
Right. Um, that kind of goes with what I was going to ask was, as you are like a small business owner for like almost 4 years now, do you think that there's anything that other small businesses could be doing better to help advocate for like the LGBTQ and Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bloom certainly doesn't. I don't want to make it seem as though I'm doing everything right. I do my best, and with what we have and what we can do. And I think, it is, like I said, if a business can donate a gift card or a service or whatever it is, if it could be anything. A business can donate something and it not affect them drastically. And they can promote that on social media, and the more people that see, oh, hey, they just donated to this cause, like they're like, cool, I'm going to share that, and then they do. And then so people know what you're doing. And I think it's important for your business to kind of, it not only gets your voice out there and lets people know how you feel, but also people start talking about your business. And I think, that could possibly be part of why we are so busy right now, is just like, people are happy with the decisions that we've made. It may not always be like that. Like I said, I'm doing my best, and trying to go day by day. But I think, yeah, people will start to come around, or at least I hope so. I try to be positive, with that thinking, because there's so much negative in the world. But our area, honestly, I think that it is coming around, slowly but surely. Um, it's not as scary for LGBTQ. And now I cannot speak to the people in our area that experience discrimination. And so I just try to listen and, do what I can to be helpful, and just let them take the lead and tell me. She, like in this case, I don't know much about the event yet, because I don't think, I'm not so sure that there are many details about it. But just being open to hearing about this, and not, I mean, we do, as business owners, you do get a lot of requests from a lot of different things, and so you have to pick and choose. But for something like a Juneteenth event, like that is something that I'm like, okay, I'll mark that in my inbox, as I definitely want to respond to that, versus something that's like, contribute to our little league, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to choose that one, if I don't want.
Yeah, right, right.
I mean, I'm not saying don't support little leagues. Not saying that
You
either.
heard it here. Fehr hates little leagues. um, Cool. So my last main question that I have off the top of my head is, do you have any advice for people who are either thinking of opening up a small business or maybe already have a small business, but they're, kind of new to the scene? Do you have any advice for them? Because I feel like a lot of people probably have, I mean, not everybody, but I feel like some people might be nervous about voicing their political opinions about their small business, or do you have any advice for people like that just based on your experience?
Um, I suppose I would say that, like I said before, human rights um, are political, but they should not be. And so if you can take the time to make that known, with your employees will tell, other people, and you can really expand on that in posting on social media. I'm certainly not saying, Bloom doesn't, we do a lot of good, but it's not as if I'm posting something political all the time. I'm not. I think that I try to when necessary. And if somebody asks me, obviously, like I suppose I'm a little conservative on how much I post and how much content we post anyway. But being really true to your beliefs and not being afraid to speak out will only help and not hurt, I don't think. Because yes, there will be some people that will be like, oh, well, they, and a lot of restaurant owners have seen some pushback on that, when they do. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It depends on what you're promoting. I suppose every instance is different. I mean, I have seen the opposite of that, though. I have seen, a lot of unfortunately, like I don't know how in detail you want me to get to this, Abby, but like I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
I could go down like a deep hole. So I don't know exactly, but I think like the opposite side of that is a restaurant being conservative. And if something happened, like say Bloom was employing somebody that was promoting like Nazi propaganda or something crazy. Like, if that happened and somebody messaged me and said so and so is promoting a hate timeline and they had proof, I would have to speak out about it, and I would have to say it's not okay. So
Hmm.
you have to, when situations like that happen, I don't think it's okay to just be like, oh, well, and take their side. If they're
Right.
doing something wrong, you have to say it. And so you have to not be afraid to do that. And because it is important to the integrity of your business, because when you're a business owner, it is like your whole life, and people want to feel connected to the owner in some way. I don't know that I don't know if that
No,
answers.
yeah. No, that's definitely what I was looking for.
Okay.
You've definitely done a great job at not hiring people who are into Nazi propaganda.
Let's
So
hope it has not happened to me, but if it did, I mean, I have a pretty strict screening process. I feel like they would
yeah.
not get through.
Okay. I think that kind of covers everything that I thought of. Do you have anything else you wanted to add or anything else you thought of?
No, I'm thankful for this interview and to be part of this project. I think it's great, and we've seen a lot of changes with businesses over the years, and it'll be interesting to look back on this, a year from now and see what other changes we made because of the pandemic, and because of some historical things that are happening. It's just I think we're in a period of change and for the better.
Yeah. I know I was just talking to my partner and I was saying how excited I was to come back and visit and see where everything was at here because I'll be leaving here in a couple of weeks, and Bloom has already changed so much just since we reopened in the pandemic. So I'm really, really excited to see where everything goes when I come back and what the food is like and what the atmosphere is like and how everyone's, you know, been adjusting to everything. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be really interesting. Even 6 months from now, what will happen? You know, everyone's getting vaccinated, so restrictions are lifting, and Bloom's changing in a lot of ways, and we're outgrowing our space. So who knows what will happen?
bigger and better things. Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Yeah, thank you. I will see you soon.